Most people spend their lives trying to become more accepted. They say yes too often. They explain themselves too much. They make themselves available to everyone and then wonder why no one truly values them. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The world rarely rewards what is unlimited. It protects what is rare. If you want people to respect your presence, you must first understand the psychology of value and why becoming less available often makes you far more valuable. From the moment we're young, we're taught that being helpful, agreeable, and constantly available will earn us appreciation. Yet real life often teaches the opposite lesson. The person who gives away every hour, every opinion, and every ounce of energy is frequently taken for granted, while the individual who protects their time, invests in their growth, and chooses their commitments carefully commands quiet respect. This isn't about becoming arrogant or emotionally distant. It's about understanding a principle that shapes nearly every human interaction. People naturally value what demonstrates discipline, purpose, and intention. Your time, your attention, and your character are your greatest assets. The way you manage them determines how others perceive your worth. Everything begins when you understand that scarcity creates perceived value. Human beings rarely value what is endlessly available. This principle extends far beyond money or material possessions. It shapes the way people perceive time, attention, opportunity, and even relationships. Think about how quickly something loses its significance once it becomes unlimited. Advice offered too freely is often ignored. Constant availability becomes expected instead of appreciated. Endless access gradually removes the sense of importance that once existed. The human mind naturally assigns greater value to things that require patience, discipline, effort, or sacrifice. This is not simply a cultural habit. It is a deeply rooted psychological tendency that influences decisions every day. Many people unknowingly reduce their own value by making themselves available at every moment. They answer every message immediately, accept every invitation, solve every problem placed before them, and rarely allow others to experience the possibility of hearing the word no. At first, this behavior appears generous. Over time, however, generosity without limits quietly transforms into expectation. People stop appreciating what they assume will always be there. What was once considered kindness gradually becomes viewed as obligation. Respect begins to decline, not because the person has changed, but because familiarity has erased the sense of rarity. Scarcity should never be confused with playing manipulative games or pretending to be busy for the sake of appearances. Artificial distance eventually reveals itself and destroys trust. Genuine scarcity is created when your priorities become so meaningful that they naturally limit your availability. A person deeply committed to growth, excellence, meaningful work, and personal discipline simply has less unnecessary time to give away. Their absence is not calculated. It is the natural result of living with intention. Because their attention is invested carefully, every interaction carries greater weight. This principle also applies to your words. People who constantly speak often weaken the impact of what they say. Every opinion is shared. Every emotion is expressed, every silence is immediately filled. Eventually, others stop listening because nothing feels significant anymore. In contrast, someone who speaks thoughtfully and only when necessary creates anticipation. Their words matter because they are not scattered carelessly. Silence allows meaning to accumulate. When they finally speak, people naturally pay attention because experience has taught them that their words are deliberate rather than impulsive. The same psychology governs personal standards. Individuals who compromise their principles whenever pressure appears gradually communicate that those principles are negotiable. Others begin treating them accordingly. But someone who consistently protects their standards, even when doing so is uncomfortable, develops quiet credibility. Their decisions become predictable because they are guided by values instead of convenience. This consistency creates trust, and trust naturally increases perceived value. There is another reason scarcity commands respect. It signals discipline. The ability to decline unnecessary commitments demonstrates that your attention is already invested in something important. People instinctively recognize that a person who carefully protects their time is likely protecting something meaningful. This perception creates curiosity and respect because disciplined people communicate without saying a word that they have priorities greater than immediate approval. Their life is not organized around satisfying every request that appears before them. Scarcity also protects your emotional independence. When your happiness depends on constant interaction, approval, or recognition, your availability becomes driven by need rather than choice. Need is often visible. Others sense when someone fears being ignored or rejected, and that fear quietly shifts the balance of influence. In contrast, someone who is comfortable spending time alone, developing themselves, and pursuing meaningful goals interacts from a position of choice instead of emotional dependence. Their relationships become healthier because they are built upon mutual respect rather than constant reassurance. The objective is never to become distant, arrogant, or emotionally unavailable. Healthy relationships require generosity, kindness, and reliability. The difference lies in intentionality. Give your attention where it creates genuine value instead of distributing it equally to every demand. Protect your energy so that when you choose to invest it, your presence becomes meaningful rather than ordinary. Over time, people learn that access to your time, focus, and trust is something earned through mutual respect rather than assumed through convenience. Stop giving unlimited access to yourself. Unlimited access often feels generous, but it quietly teaches people that your time, attention, and emotional energy have no boundaries. Every time you interrupt your priorities to satisfy every request, you reinforce the belief that your schedule is always negotiable. At first, people may appreciate your willingness to help. Eventually, many begin expecting it. Appreciation slowly transforms into entitlement, and what once earned gratitude becomes viewed as a permanent obligation. This shift rarely happens all at once. It develops gradually through repeated patterns until you realize that everyone has access to you except yourself. One of the greatest misconceptions is believing that constant availability creates stronger relationships. In reality, healthy relationships respect limits. They recognize that every person needs uninterrupted time to think, work, rest, and grow. Relationships that demand unlimited access often become dependent rather than supportive. When someone becomes frustrated simply because you are unavailable for a reasonable period, their reaction reveals more about their expectations than about your character. Boundaries do not weaken genuine respect. They reveal whether respect truly existed in the first place. Many people avoid setting boundaries because they fear disappointing others. They confuse saying no with being unkind. Yet every meaningful achievement requires the ability to protect attention from unnecessary interruption. Every hour invested in someone else's urgency is an hour unavailable for your own long-term purpose. Without realizing it, you begin living according to other people's priorities instead of your own. Gradually, your goals receive whatever time remains after everyone else's demands have been satisfied. Protecting access to yourself also strengthens emotional stability. When every message requires an immediate response, every opinion demands an explanation, and every criticism requires a defense, your inner peace becomes dependent upon external circumstances. The disciplined person understands that not every request deserves immediate attention, and not every misunderstanding requires clarification. They choose responses carefully instead of reacting automatically. This calm selectiveness communicates confidence because it demonstrates that their actions are guided by priorities rather than pressure. There is remarkable strength in allowing your work, character, and consistency to speak louder than constant availability. People eventually recognize those who manage their attention wisely because their presence remains intentional instead of habitual. They are fully engaged when they choose to be present, but they are never controlled by the expectation of being constantly accessible. This balance protects both productivity and relationships, allowing generosity to remain a choice instead of becoming an obligation. Learning to limit access is ultimately an act of self-respect. It communicates that your time has purpose, your energy has value, and your attention is not an unlimited resource to be claimed by every passing demand. When you establish clear boundaries with consistency and respect, people gradually learn how to treat you. Those who value the relationship will adapt, while those who benefited only from unlimited access may resist the change. In either case, you gain something far more valuable than approval. You regain ownership of your time, your focus, and the direction of your own life. Silence increases your influence. Silence is often mistaken for weakness because the modern world rewards constant expression. People feel pressured to explain every decision, defend every opinion, and respond immediately to every challenge. Yet influence rarely belongs to the person who speaks the most. It belongs to the person whose words are measured, deliberate, and supported by consistent action. When you learn to become comfortable with silence, you stop giving others unlimited access to your thoughts and emotions. You create space to observe instead of reacting, to understand instead of assuming. This makes your decisions more intentional and far more difficult to influence. Silence also changes the dynamics of every conversation. The person who is constantly talking usually reveals more than they intend, while the one who listens carefully gains valuable insight into motives, emotions, and hidden intentions. People naturally fill silence with information because they become uncomfortable with uncertainty. By remaining patient, you often discover far more than you would through endless conversation. This is not about becoming mysterious for the sake of appearance. It is about recognizing that thoughtful restraint is often more powerful than unnecessary explanation. The less you feel compelled to prove yourself with words, the more your actions begin speaking on your behalf, allowing your presence to command attention without demanding it. Guard your time like a valuable asset. Time is the only resource every person receives equally, yet it is often treated as though it has no value. Money lost can be earned again. Opportunities may return. Time never does. Every unnecessary meeting, meaningless argument, or obligation accepted out of guilt quietly steals hours that could have been invested in building a stronger future. People who achieve lasting influence understand that protecting their time is not selfish. It is essential. They evaluate commitments carefully because they know every yes automatically becomes a no to something else. When you begin treating your time as valuable, other people gradually begin treating it the same way. This does not require arrogance or distance. It requires clarity about your priorities and the discipline to refuse distractions that do not serve them. A schedule filled with constant interruptions leaves little room for deep thinking, meaningful work, or personal growth. By protecting your attention and directing it toward purposeful activities, you increase both the quality of your decisions and the value of your contributions. People naturally respect individuals who demonstrate that their time is invested with intention rather than given away without thought. Never chase approval, let respect chase you. The moment your decisions become driven by the desire to be liked, you begin surrendering your independence. Approval is temporary because it depends on changing opinions, while respect is built through consistency, integrity, and self-discipline. People who constantly seek validation often compromise their values to avoid rejection or criticism. Those who command lasting respect remain true to their principles even when doing so is unpopular. They understand that genuine influence cannot be begged for or performed. It is earned by repeatedly demonstrating character, reliability, and confidence without allowing public opinion to dictate their direction. Build rare skills that can't be replaced. Nothing increases your value more than becoming exceptionally good at something that few people can do well. Rare skills create opportunities, strengthen confidence, and make your contribution difficult to overlook. Instead of competing for attention, invest your energy in mastering abilities that solve meaningful problems and produce lasting results. Excellence attracts respect because it reflects patience, discipline, and continuous improvement. The more valuable your knowledge and capabilities become, the less you need to convince others of your worth. Your competence quietly speaks for itself, making your presence increasingly difficult to replace. Set boundaries that others learn to respect. Boundaries define how you expect your time, energy, and values to be treated. Without them, people naturally assume unlimited access to your attention and begin placing their priorities above your own. Establishing clear boundaries is not an act of selfishness, but an expression of self-respect. It communicates that your commitments, principles, and personal well-being matter. Some people may resist these limits because they benefited from their absence, but those who genuinely respect you will learn to honor them. Strong boundaries protect your focus, preserve your peace, and strengthen the quality of every meaningful relationship. Become selective with your energy. Not every conversation deserves your attention, and not every conflict deserves your response. Your emotional and mental energy are limited resources that should be invested wisely, rather than scattered across unnecessary drama and distractions. Learn to recognize which people, opportunities, and challenges deserve your best effort and which simply drain your focus. Being selective does not mean becoming indifferent or uncaring. It means directing your energy toward what aligns with your values and long-term purpose. The more intentionally you invest your energy, the more powerful your presence becomes and the greater your influence over your own life. Make your presence memorable, not constant. People often remember quality far longer than quantity. When you are constantly available, your presence can become predictable and easily overlooked. Instead, focus on making every interaction meaningful through thoughtful words, genuine attention, and purposeful action. Leave people with the impression that your time carries value because it is given intentionally rather than automatically. This does not require becoming distant or mysterious. It requires understanding that consistency, substance, and authenticity create a lasting impression. A memorable presence is built through character and purpose, not through constant visibility or the need to always be noticed. True value is earned through self-respect, not attention. Attention can be gained through noise, controversy, or temporary popularity, but genuine value is created through the quiet discipline of honoring your principles every day. When your self-worth depends on recognition, you become vulnerable to the changing opinions of others. Self-respect frees you from that dependence because it is built on integrity, discipline, and personal standards that remain steady regardless of external validation. As you consistently invest in your character, skills, and purpose, people begin respecting you naturally. Lasting influence belongs to those who value themselves enough to never compromise who they are for fleeting attention. The greatest source of personal value is never status, wealth, or popularity. It is the discipline to protect what matters most: your time, your attention, your standards, and your character. Throughout this journey, we've seen that respect cannot be demanded and influence cannot be manufactured through constant visibility. They grow naturally when your actions consistently reflect purpose instead of people-pleasing, excellence instead of convenience, and self-respect instead of the need for approval. As you strengthen your skills, establish healthy boundaries, speak with intention, and invest your energy wisely, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing recognition because your character begins creating it for you. The goal is not to become unavailable for the sake of appearing important. The goal is to become so committed to meaningful work and unwavering principles that your presence naturally becomes valuable. When your worth comes from who you are rather than how much attention you receive, respect stops being something you pursue and becomes something you quietly attract. Never forget this. Lasting influence belongs to those who value themselves enough to never compromise who they are for fleeting attention. If this perspective challenged the way you think, subscribe for more videos on psychology, discipline, human behavior, and personal growth. Each video is designed to help you build a stronger mind, make wiser decisions, and develop the kind of character that earns lasting respect. Now tell me in the comments, what's the one habit that makes a person truly valuable? Protecting their time, mastering a rare skill, setting boundaries, or developing self-respect? I'd love to hear your perspective. Never forget this. Lasting influence belongs to those who value themselves enough to never compromise who they are for fleeting attention. If this perspective challenged the way you think, subscribe for more videos on psychology, discipline, human behavior, and personal growth. Each video is designed to help you build a stronger mind, make wiser decisions, and develop the kind of character that earns lasting respect. Now tell me in the comments, what's the one habit that makes a person truly valuable? Protecting their time, mastering a rare skill, setting boundaries, or developing self-respect? I'd love to hear your perspective.